సార్ అవుతుంది సార్ రెండు రావాలి సార్
తర్వాత ఆన్ చేస్తాం. అవును. టికాన్ కూడా టికాన్.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Center for Human Security Studies and Dr. MCR Acharya Institute, India's premier civil services training institute, which is founded in 1976, more than 4 decades old institution of eminence in imparting training to civil servants of the state and central level, which I have given you a brief few minutes back. Now it is our privilege, and we are very, very happy to note that Sri Acharya sir, Director General, Special Chief Secretary, Government of Telangana, country's senior most IAS officer, 1983 batch. Sir is going to address all the youngsters. Already I have given a brief to sir about your backgrounds. Most of you are from Telangana tribal welfare colleges who pursuing undergraduation second year of the BA BCom MSc, and also large students from different parts of the country, about 60 plus from different national universities, and also AP police families, students from AP police families like who are pursuing UG and PG. So you are all there. Sir is going to talk about one of the most important topics of this current pandemic situation. What are the lessons of pandemic? How can we draw some lessons and move forward, which should be in alignment with nature? So we have abused, misused nature, and sustainable development goals are those goals set by United Nations 2015 to be achieved by 2030 under such leadership.
Camera is not focusing. Speaking of.
Oh, no, sir. Focus it.
There is a sustainable development goal center in the premises of Dr. Acharya Institute also. Sir has been leading that from the front to impart training to civil servants, state level officers, and also from Panchayat Raj to almost to senior IAS level. They come here for training on SDG, sustainable development goals, which are 17 in number. And one of the most important things that I have to tell you very honestly, and I'll conclude, Shri BP Acharya IAS sir is not only an IAS officer of 1983 batch, the man who believes in promoting talent, spotting on the talent, and also encouraging them, grooming them, chiseling them to respective careers, be it from a village, be it from a background of let's say from town or city. Sir takes a lot of interest in detailing and making a particular human resources turns out to be very motivated, spirited to serve the nation building. So sir has his own leadership. Just I will read 2-3 brief lines about sir, because you have to know about this. Because this country needs a man of his eminence, a man of his integrity, a man of his vision for the country. No, so please listen to this, very important. BP Acharya IAS is the Special Chief Secretary to Government of Telangana, General Administration Department, Director General of Acharya Institute of Telangana. In his long stellar career in bureaucracy, he held a number of important positions and conceived and launched many new innovative initiatives. That's very important. Launching new innovative initiatives from the A to Z. When dots are connected, then only you can have the reliable, practical, actionable things happening. So sir believes in that. And I have been witnessing that. That's why I'm able to tell you some conviction. So besides that, important initiatives I told you. What are those important initiatives which have generated employment for lakhs and lakhs of people? Genome Valley. One of the most important things in Hyderabad is Genome Valley. And not only that, biotech sector. Most important sector is biotechnology, biotech sector. In combined Andhra Pradesh, over 20 world-class economic structures or clusters, special economic zones, sir has built over a period of last 2-3 decades. So, over 40 lakh persons got direct employment and indirect employment many. Then you quantify that. So, like this, a very important role, and one more important thing is State Tourism Development Corporation and strengthening of decentralized planning in the state. Two things: tourism and also again strengthening the planning architecture of the state. So he is heading Acharya as Director General since 2017 March, and in the last 2.5 years, 3 years, almost 3 years, more than 3 years, he has implemented several innovative training programs, including e-learning for field staff covering over 80,000 employees. 80,000, mind you, I'm repeating, 80,000 employees in the state in the last 3 years. And sir has given leadership to do many things on foundation courses, special foundation courses. This is next to Mussoorie only, Labasna, Acharya Institute of Telangana, under sir's leadership. These are his contributions. Besides this, sir is a very good cartoonist, very, very analytical, very pinpointed cartoons which we are going to show, and also a man with a humane perspective, humane vision. It's not about the prefixes and suffixes that are important. It's about what kind of a human being you are and how are you going to contribute to the nation building. Is what the gist of Sir's personality. I take immense pride and privilege, and also want to thank you. Keep it on record, sir. We are very, very thankful to you and indebted to you, sir. Now we need you, sir. Acharya.
Thank you, Dr. Ramesh, for the very kind words. I don't know whether I deserve them, but it's indeed a great pleasure that I'm able to interact today with young friends. I was told that over 60 students, law students from different law universities from across the country, over 100 students from the social welfare institutions of Telangana, and over 100 undergraduate students belonging to the families of the police personnel in Andhra Pradesh, and other participants are part of this webinar today. The topic I've chosen is slightly different. I would like to begin by showing you a small film, a small video clip. It's by a famous American astronomer. Maybe many of you have seen it. He's an astronomer, philosopher, Carl Sagan. I will show you the film, and after that, I will relate it to the topic today. Show the film, please.
From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest. But for us, it's different. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on the mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit? Yes. Settle? Not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.
This video clip, which is also known as the paid blue dot, in a way sums up the overall experience of the pandemic that we had in the last 5 to 6 months. The pandemic broke out somewhere around the Chinese New Year, that is in January, February in Wuhan, and started spreading. The last 5-6 months, if anything it has done is to humble the human beings. It's a humbling experience. We in the pale blue dot need to know our position, where we are, where we stand, that a small invisible enemy of the universe can defeat the mightiest of the countries, the most advanced of the countries who were arrogant about their scientific progress, about medical facility, about the well-being of the people. They have been caught napping. The whole world has been caught napping. I was told that all of you are interns at different levels of your career. We have to first intern as human beings to be fit to live in the post-pandemic world. In a way, this 6 months is our internship for the entire human race. We are learning new things. We are learning new normals, new ways of life. Next. In other words, the models that we have followed over the last 400-500 years, that has become irrelevant. The model based on the Western capitalism, model based on the ethics that were followed in the West, sometimes called the Protestant ethics, sometimes called the Weberian ethics, of conquering the nature, is a paradigm which has to be rethought. We need to coexist with nature. We need to respect the nature. It is in sharp contrast to what the Eastern civilizations taught us. While the West taught us to conquer nature, whether it is Chinese or the Indian or the Japanese or the Korean, we were taught in our scriptures to coexist in harmony with nature. In fact, every mantra in the Veda would end with the Shanti Shlok, which would say Antariksha Shanti, Anaspate Shanti, Prithvi Shanti, invoking peace to everyone, to the nature, to the trees, to the cosmic universe. That is where 3,500 years, our ancient sages taught us we need to propitiate the nature, we need to propitiate the universe to be part of that great system. We need to know our place in the whole scheme of things. That we somehow down the line, for the last 400 years of the model that we followed, of unbridled greed, of unbridled industrial growth, of revolution that overtook the world, have tended to forget. So the pandemic has taught us, among other things, that you can't go back to that kind of a normal life. Now, we need to change. None of us knew when the first lockdown started in March, none of us ever thought that we will be having virtual classes like this. We will be forced to interact virtually and online, this kind of a medium. We do. The ways, the games of change have, the rules of the game have changed over the last 6 months. That is what is important, and all of us need to draw lessons from it. We need to respect the family, we need to respect how to live with them, and don't take them for granted. That's what perhaps the biggest lesson. There are different corollaries to this lesson, which I will also touch upon briefly. For instance, there has been a debate. Of course, I will also touch upon briefly on how the climate change has shown its effects in different parts. We will when I try to link the lessons of the pandemic with that of sustainable development goals, we need to say how to make it sustainable both environmentally as well as socially. There are different debates which are raging all over the world. This is a cartoon of mine which shows the debate on life or liberty. Whether to wear a mask, a simple thing which we thought. In India, we all of us accepted that yes, we need to wear a mask. But in USA, there is a big debate going on whether to wear a mask or not. Whether it is against the concept of liberty that America stands for. This is a cartoon of mine which I have tried to bring out that irony. In India, the debate was between life and livelihood. We had thousands of migrant laborers, lakhs of them, by some estimate, 40 lakh of them, who went from Surat to their Bihar or Jharkhand, wherever they came from, or from Chennai to Bihar or to UP, from Hyderabad to UP, from Bangalore to UP. What do we fail in trying to create an assurance? There is also now a debate between life and career, whether the NEET and the JEE exam are important or protection of life is more important. Supreme Court yesterday ruled that life has to go on. We can't indefinitely postpone the entrance tests. That is where these debates, which typify the lessons of the pandemic, they also, in a way, tell us about the shifting goalposts of the sustainable development goals. When sustainable development goals, the idea was rooted at the global agenda. Idea was to achieve it by 2030 at different kind of levels. I will now come to those goals briefly. Many of you must be aware of it already, but I will repeat it and try to link with these how the pandemic has brought out different dimensions to these goals. How achieving these goals today is even more difficult than we thought 15 years ago or 10 years ago. Next. Of the predecessors of the precursor of the SDG, as all of you know, the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs as they were called. They were at the dawn of the beginning of the millennium. It was launched by the UN agencies. Idea was to achieve it by 2015, but to put it very mildly, charitably, nothing much was achieved. It was achieved on paper. Thanks largely due to the lack of awareness, lack of institutional structure, effective monitoring mechanism, and coordination among various contributors. It came and went. Not much really was achieved in reality. That is where the UN stepped in again in 2015. The global agenda with 17 goals, 169 targets. At the national level, we have 306 indicators. I will briefly touch upon these indicators and tell you how each one of them has become difficult, more difficult to handle, how we need to strive, go that extra mile to achieve this. There are basically 5 P's in these models. This again is relevant to the lessons that pandemic has thrown open: people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership. People is they pertains to 5 of the goals. Goal number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Planet to 6, 12, 13, 14. Protect the ecosystem, societies, and our children. Prosperity, about the inclusive growth and transformative economy. Goal number 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Peace is goal number 16. Partnership is 17. How to interact with various stakeholders. Again, put it in a different perspective, the universality of these goals, integration among the goals. Unlike the SDGs, each one is interrelated. You can't say that I am going to achieve one only. I don't care about remaining 60. That won't happen. You need to integrate different goals to try to achieve them. Eventually, the bottom line of achieving this goal is that no one is left behind. It should touch the poorest of the poor. The last of the migrants who had to run away from the workplace of work has to be touched by these goals. We need to address his problems, his worries. Why is he leaving the place he was in earlier? What is it why did the pandemic force him to leave the place of work and go back to his homeland, to the state where he belongs to, knowing jolly well there's nothing, no work there? What is it why did he get provoked to leave? Why did he lose his faith in the system? That's where all of us need to address. You as young people need to address. This is what the generations, our generation, in a way has failed largely in achieving, creating that confidence, inspiring that confidence in the poorest of the poor in our country. These are the broad 17 goals. All of you have known about it already. I did not repeat. 17 of them, trying to make it as inclusive as possible, trying to cover all areas. First, life below water, the climate action, life on land. These are broad terms which have to be interpreted in our own ways. The first 5, to my mind, are the most important for India. No poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being. The third goal is what has come to focus during the pandemic even more. The weaknesses of the healthcare systems, public healthcare systems in particular, not only in developing countries like India, but also the most advanced countries of Europe and the US, so-called richest of the countries who were supposed to be better prepared. They are now the worst. We have had pandemics in the past. We've had the Spanish flu of the 1918-20, more than 5 crore people died. Before that, we had the Great Plague of London in 1665, and the worst of the recorded pandemics as per the recent history is in the 1347, in the 14th century. It's called the Black Death. Nearly 20 crore people had died. It was in the Europe and the North Africa, Eurasia particularly. It has happened in the 14th century. But in 600 years, have we learned much between 1400 and 2020? Has the situation changed much? We have made a lot of advances. We have made a lot of advances in terms of science, in warfare, in atom bombs, nuclear capability, techniques of bombing each other. Have we made proportionate advances in fighting pandemics? Have we made proportionate advances in improving the healthcare system? Have we got a robust system of vaccination in place? These are the areas where all of us need to think about. And are we prepared now better to face a similar pandemic in next 5-10 years? That is where all of us need to think back. Young people like you need to ponder. Sometimes there is a tendency that SDG is something that will happen, something to achieve at the UN level, at the country level, and we need not act. The social welfare students sitting in Karimnagar did not really worry about it. How am I concerned? It has been achieved in Hyderabad, it has been achieved in Delhi or in New York. Everyone can contribute in achieving SDGs at his or her level in wherever they are located today. That's why I think globally and act locally. How do you plan to localize the SDG? That is the challenge there. In fact, SDG is such a global agenda which cannot be achieved sitting in the national headquarters or the state headquarters or the international headquarters. It has to be achieved at the grassroots, at the villages, the towns of India. The urban and rural areas is where the poorest of the poor need to be uplifted. That is where the SDG can get achieved. While the SDGs is a global agenda, to achieve it, we need to go to the cutting edge level so that no one is left behind. All the SDGs have the targets directly related to responsibility of local government, regional government, healthcare, education. All these cannot be achieved by setting agendas at center and forgetting to implement at the field. This is where everyone's responsibility is important. And that is where state governments, local bodies need to work together. The NGOs must work together. Civil society must work together. Sensitizing about the SDGs, that's where you people have a role, creating awareness on SDGs at the sub-district village level. Advocacy, saying that SDG for SDG's sake doesn't make sense. If you achieve the SDGs, in other words, you will improve your village. You will uplift the poorest family of the village. That is where the challenge of achieving SDG lies. Planning to having proper planning for achieving SDGs again important, where Assam in our country showed some way in trying to have budget allocations for SDG, monitoring and evaluation, which has a very robust mechanism for that, which is again required. A few words about how to integrate the planning and implementation of SDGs. We need to focus on outcomes and results rather than activities. We need to work backwards from the vision. You have a target, no hunger. How do we achieve this target? No poverty or zero hunger. To achieve this, we need to see who are the most vulnerable of the families. Mapping each of the indicators very carefully with budgets and programs. Involvement of the top level political leaders and also trickling it down to at the bottom. It has to have everything and everyone involved. Mainstreaming of the national agenda is what is required. Who are the key stakeholders? The government, the corporate sector, civil society. If you use this matrix, judge how have you performed during this present pandemic? The government, corporate sector, civil society, non-governmental organization, philanthropic business, self-help groups, students, teachers, academicians, elected representatives, media. This is in fact the matrix which every situation can be judged. How has the government acted in these? There are mixed reports. Could the government have been more careful? Could the government prepared better? Could the government implemented the lockdown more effectively? Or could the government have used the lockdown period to strengthen the healthcare system? These are the questions which need to be answered. Is the corporate sector responsible? Why there are so many complaints about private hospitals? They are looting the patients who go there. What is the responsibility? Corporate social responsibility. So these are the parameters where you can judge the lessons of pandemic by each of the stakeholders. Whether these civil society organizations, we all talk about one actor like Sonu Sood who came to the rescue of the migrant laborers. How were the other CSOs involved, the NGOs and the CSOs, whether they came up enough? Philanthropy and business. Just yesterday I saw a report from the Secretary of Rural Development who lauded the role of self-help groups in rural areas, who supplied masks and sanitizers, made local initiatives to shield the rural population against the pandemic. Students and teachers and academicians. Did we play our role? This is where you people come. I have heard of students, we had some trainees who in the respective villages, they created awareness. We had an IPS trainee in Aurangabad, in the Buldana district of Aurangabad area. He in turn tried to see that in the entire village is sensitized about the need for precautions against the pandemic. Elected representatives also have they played their role? Have the media played the positive role, or did it spread false stories? Social media particularly. How has it helped us in tackling the pandemic? What I say about pandemic can be used for each of the goals of the SDG. That's where the organic link between the pandemic and the SDGs is what I want to stress upon. Need to integrate all these stakeholders and see work together. Finally, it is not watertight compartment that government has to work separately, and has to work separately, philanthropy, business. Each of these stakeholders has to coordinate, has to work together. It's a battle that all of us need to fight together, not one against the other, not one versus the other. That is what is important. This is again a lesson of the pandemic that if you say that we only criticize the government and we don't do anything, if we keep on moving around without a mask and blame the government, your lockdown is not good, you can't help it. The people like in the Europe, they are more keen on going on vacations, spending time in the beach. No one can stop the pandemic to throw caution to the wind. That is where the responsibility of everyone comes. The urgency in achieving the goals has become even more pronounced with the pandemic. Definitely, the economies all over the world has contracted. As per the latest report, RBI, our economy, our GDP has contracted 16% or so. So we need to mobilize that much more resources to achieve the agenda is fulfilled. That is where the resource allocation, the challenges of planning become much more because resources have become scarcer. For instance, current year's budget has all but gone for a 6. The department-wise allocations will be very difficult to set apart to achieve the respective goals. Dovetailing the different programs to achieving SDGs in different states is again important. Communicating the new agenda of SDGs at the national, sub-national, local levels is another area we need to focus on. And all players need to participate. It's not as if only by a diktat from Government of India or the state government dictated. That's where the accountability at all levels must be ensured. All that I'm saying about SDGs also is appropriate for tackling the pandemic. Eventually, respect the universal, interlinked, and indivisible nature of the agenda. This is again another lesson of the pandemic that all of us have learned. You can't say that we don't care what somebody in Wuhan does. We are protected against the virus. The virus does not understand territorial boundaries. You may be the richest area in Bombay. You can say, I don't care what happens in Arabi. It is going to affect you as well. The universal nature of the pandemic has taught us that we can't isolate ourselves. We swim must sink together as a human race. That's where I began by saying all the entire human race is interning in the new ways of life. We need to forget the old ways of working the way we want, traveling and expanding our carbon footprint the way we want. We need to get used to new ways of life. In the near future, I don't foresee a normal returning to the past way. It will be a pity if we forget the lessons of the pandemic and go back to earlier ways of unbridled greed, unbridled exploitation of nature. That is what has led to this in many ways. Monitoring and evaluation of how we have achieved what we have done in the last several years. That is what is important. Every district needs to have a dashboard for the electors, as we are having a dashboard now for the pandemic growth. Mid-course corrections wherever necessary, and redesign strategies based on the feedback that we get. In Telangana, we have the issue of how to link it up with the concept for the Bangaru Telangana, the Golden Telangana. This is an example case study of what state, how do we will link Bangaru Telangana and then I will skip this. This is what we have been doing in this Dr. Ramesh briefly mentioned about the SDG center that we have in the institute. It's called Center for Sustainable Development Goals. We involve our trainees in learning about SDGs, preparing action plans for the village levels. They go on village visits and we ask them to prepare village level action plans. This is a picture of the inauguration of this center. Dr. Saraswat, the member of the PIO, he came for this inauguration. UN representative also was there. We had a workshop at that time. We developed the SDG framework in Telugu and distributed to each circle. This is the center. This in a way the beginning of this is where the IT started in. This used to be the original office of Microsoft in Hyderabad when they first set it. When Bill Gates met the former chief minister, this is where Microsoft office started. We also have an e-learning module that we can enroll you, we can send you the link. This is a step-by-step e-learning module on Telangana. We developed that by our center. I would like to end with this cartoon of mine, which is a tribute to Acharya, saying that this pandemic also shall pass, and together we shall work together to see that we shall overcome this pandemic. But to overcome, we need to learn the lessons very, very carefully. We can't wish to afford to wish away the lessons of the time. That is where achieving SDG or progressing in future for you as interns, for you as students, for us as human beings matters. All of you need to remember that. And the kind of situation that country is passing through, we just had the Independence Day. I'll show you the picture how the people have celebrated Independence Day, different kinds of adversities. That is what the true spirit of nationalism. After that, I'll take a few questions if you have any. This is what this is a picture which came out in social media. How people half-clad children they are paying their tribute to motherland. If this is what the future generation is like, malnourished, stunted children, can we afford to think of SDGs? All of you need to ponder over this and see that we do our bit to address this situation. If India has to become a developed country, we have achieved the SDGs, we need to change this. We can't afford to have 30-40% of our population in this kind of situation and dream of achieving superpower status. I don't think that's a realistic dream. We not only need to learn the lessons of the pandemic, we also need to learn that we can't ignore large parts of the society who were doomed to this kind of thing. We need to do our mind to change the situation. And you as young people owe it to the country to change this. Thank you very much. I'll take a few questions if you have any at this stage.
Thank you very much, sir. Very brief, but very to the point. Sir, the best part of your presentation, which I personally like, is the life and liberty. The way that you have shown through a cartoon, you have summed up the whole pandemic. You know, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is what Americans mentioned in the Constitution. The Statue of Liberty says that if you remove the mask, you are going to have it. You keep the mask on, so you can go on the life. So that one cartoon, and one more thing, sir, also very important is whether we swim or sink. We all have to swim this, you know, whether this rough conditions or rough terrain or rough waters in the form of pandemic by respecting nature. That's what sir has emphasized. Without taking much time, I would like to request you, because you are the future of India, as sir said, and I also believe you have to interact with sir, ask questions, very pinpointed, straight question, without no sub questions. Introduce yourself and ask. May I request from CHS's core team to start and then go to tribal welfare colonies also. Yeah. Okay, Amritarashmi, you can ask.
Sir, how MDG's period is helpful in development? I mean,
Could you please repeat it? Part of it is not audible. Please repeat the question.
Question was repeat the question.
Millennium Development Goals, how is it helpful in development, sir? I mean, in according to poverty, disease, hunger during the period of 2000 and 2000.
That's what I mentioned, that Millennium Development Goals, when they were planned in 2000 and supposed to be achieved in 2015, not much was achieved. Actually, it was universally accepted as a failure. It came and went without people noticing it. That is why UN came with a new strategy of replacing it with sustainable development goals. Millennium, I'm afraid the MDGs did not do their bit in wiping out poverty or achieving the goals in the real sense. That is why new global agenda was set up in 2015. It is an admission of failure that it could not achieve the goals.
Thank you, sir.
Next question from
Sir, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. This is Chayan from Kolkata. Sir, I want to ask something.
Please.
Yes, sir. Have you told that the climate action is one of the important issue in SDGs? And sir, I want to ask you that what is your take in a climate change and human migration? Though it is an important problem for India also. Sir, if you please help in this question. What is your take actually? Human migration and climate, how it is interconnected?
Mr. Chakravarti, you were a law student?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have completed my MPhil as well, and I have done the internship with CHSS. Sir, I want to say something about the CHSS. What I think, sir, it is a great platform for the students. It is a great platform for the students. Sir, what they are doing, especially Ramesh sir, from the very beginning of their career of the students, they are guiding for the research and development, sir, and they are doing minute thing. How do we go for the sampling? What will be the research topic? How we'll write the introduction? What is the phrasing of the most important thing, footnoting system? Sir, it's a great one. It's a great one. Thank you to Ramesh sir. Thank you to Ruchira ma'am. And I think, sir, this is nothing but a great platform for the students of India. And I want to do the work in West Bengal also. To the various colleges, I will tell them to join the CHSS program as well, sir. As well, it's a great opportunity for me. Thank you, sir. Sir, please you.
Thank you, Chayan. Thank you, Mr.
No, no, sir.
Yeah, for
It
the
is my
compliments to
pleasure, sir.
CHSS, which Dr. Ramesh is here. He has taken the compliments, and I also congratulate him for designing this internship program. You asked about the climate change. You were a law student. In all the agreements that you prepare, the law students would know there is a clause called force measure. It's called some superior force which overtakes. It's a clause which is provided in agreement. In case of unforeseen developments, you can't help it. The agreement would stand modified. The obligations of the agreement would stand modified. The pandemic or the climate change is like a force measure. Unless you address the issues of the climate change, in fact, it's no longer climate change, it's called climate crisis now. We have reached a point, as I showed you in one of the clippings. Go back to that clippings for a second. Unless we do our bit in reducing the carbon emission, you would have noticed that during the climate, the traffic condition came down. The Kolkata is known notorious for the traffic jams across the place. For that matter, all the cities. You would have yourself physically seen the impact of less traffic, less of travel. You yourself would have felt healthier by staying at home or spending more time at home instead of commuting. Everyone was commuting 2 to 3 hours from their home to the place of work. That model has to change. That is where climate change, climate crisis has to be addressed by each one. This is an article, how ignorance is our enemy. How if we continue to unabated the exploitation of nature, it is not going to pardon us. The entire season has changed in Europe. There are a series of hurricanes which are hitting the coast in the USA and other areas. So there is so much aberrations which are now visible. So many species have become extinct. We cannot continue to live like this. This is like a wake-up call to the entire humanity. Pandemic was in that sense long overdue wake-up call to the entire humanity. You need to change. You can't continue to exploit nature like you are doing. So SDG also it gives that message that we need to reduce our carbon footprint as a human race in general. Thank you. I hope that answers your question. Any other question?
Yeah, next.
Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Good evening, sir. It's a nice presentation you have done regarding SDG. So recently in the news, there is a controversy about this EIA draft.
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
So would it impact the SDGs that had formed in our, in our India?
It's again a dilemma that a country like us we face: development versus the environment. Whether the needs of development can override the needs of sustainable environmental protection. That is where the challenge lies. There is a feeling that the change procedure dilutes the safeguards which are there to protect the environment. If that is so, it is going to harm us. Development has to be at the cost, cannot be at the cost of environmental protection. But again, environmental protection has to be realistically seen what can be done, what cannot be done. So that is where very fine balance has to be drawn by the planners, implemented by everyone. But the EIA or the environmental impact assessment norms to that extent need to be careful in not diluting the safeguards which are there in protecting the environment. Thank you. Chat box there, which is
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ishani, Bhavana?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, there is a question from one of the participants, Bramara. She's asking your opinion, sir, on the balance between subsistence of nature and individual liberty.
Please ask that again. I couldn't get your question fully. Please repeat it.
Balance between the subsistence of nature and individual liberty. She wants to know your opinion, sir.
Sustenance of nature and individual liberty,
Yes,
balance.
sir.
That is what I began by saying, that the Western model, where the hero is the Hercules, which conquers nature. We were taught in our culture not to conquer nature, but to coexist with nature. Whether the Korean concept of yin and yang, the Indian concept of the Antariksha Shanti, Vasudha Shanti, Buraspate Shanti, the mantras that our ancient sages taught us, propitiating the nature was the Eastern model, Oriental model of civilization. Western model focused on conquering nature, defeating nature. That is what I meant that in this 4 months of the pandemic, it has thought that the last 400 years model of conquering nature has landed us in this kind of a soup, where we don't know which kind of viruses can be grown, whether there is a link between the unbridled exploitation of nature and the pandemic. There is no answer as yet, because no one knows the origin of the virus, the nature of the virus fully as yet. We are still groping, trying to prepare vaccines for it. So unless we try to balance our individual liberty, the individual greed for whatever we want to do, with that of the collective necessity for control, collective necessity to see that precautions are taken. The debate, so-called debate in the USA about life and liberty is pointed to that. Many of them are still refusing to wear a mask, which I just can't imagine. How does wearing a mask take away your liberty? That to protect yourself. You are at liberty to die, but you can't be allowed to do harakiri. It's like saying that it's my right, my life, I can do whatever I want to. It is an absurd logic. You are not only committing harakiri, you are also exposing others to the danger by spreading it. If it is your own life, it's okay. You can do what you want to do. But nothing gives you right to spread it to others. By not wearing a mask, if you are asymptomatic and you're spreading the pandemic, your liberty has to be reasonable restrictions that the Indian Constitution says has to be enforced there. My right to move around my hand will end where the other person's the face comes. I can't indefinitely move around my hand saying that is my hand, my life, my liberty. That's where the limits of individual liberty have to be defined. Thank you. Next question, if any.
Sir, in chat box.
No, Ishan, you come there.
Chat box level.
Sir. Yes, sir. There is one question from Sevisha. How many countries signed the Sustainable Development Goals?
To the best of my knowledge, almost everyone signed it, all important countries signed it. It's a global agenda now. The meeting was attended by 139 countries, if I remember correctly, in the UN General Assembly when it was passed. 193 countries have adopted it, including India. As the first slide of my PPT shows, the PPT will be communicated to all of you, if not already done. 193 countries have by till now adopted it. So that nearly covers. Today we're talking about pandemic in 213 countries. Today's figures are, it is spread in 213 countries. The numbers are 2.2 crore people affected. 7.75 lakh people have died. This is the toll of the pandemic. So all these 213 countries are included in 193 who have signed adopted the SDG goal. The pandemic and SDG, there is a intricate and intrinsic link, organic link we need to realize. Thank you.
Ishan, from
Thank you, sir.
Amma, last one question. Last
Okay,
one
sir.
question. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Where are you, Vishali? Where are you located?
Sorry, sir.
Where are you speaking from, Ishani?
Hyderabad, sir.
No, your college, introduce.
Your college is where? Located where?
ICFI Law School, sir. Shankarpalli, Hyderabad.
ICFI Law School. Okay, right.
Yes, sir.
How many from ICFI Law School are participating today? Interning in this group?
Actually, I'm an employee of CHSS, sir. I interned with
Okay.
CHSS last year.
Right.
Now I'm working as a chief project coordinator, sir.
Right, thank you. Anyone else? Any other last question?
Hello, good
Can I
evening,
go
sir.
for
Good evening. Please
Sir,
go ahead.
Jyotsna this side, and I'm interning with CHSS.
Your
my
name
question-
again? Will you repeat your name again?
Yes, sir. Sir, Jyotsna Baghel this side, and I'm interning with CHSS.
Yeah. Jyotsna, where are you from?
Quest- Sir, I'm from Agra, and I'm doing law from Campus Law Center, Delhi.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, what is the way forward for nation states and India alike to uh, draw a balance between development and environment conservation? Because conservation or climate crisis forms a major part of SDG goals that we have. And sir, what are the way forward for countries like India to draw that balance?
I wish I could give one direct answer to that. It's a set of priorities that every country has to decide for itself in a way. Where do we draw that balance between development and environmental protection? As I referred to in answering another question, we need to see that our development needs are balanced in such a way that they are sustainable with, they are compatible with environmental protection. A development, for instance, energy requirement cannot any longer be thought of by building thermal power plants. We need to go for newer and non-polluting sources of energy like solar energy. That's an example that I want to. You may be having huge needs of power consumption, but we need to go for non-polluting and renewable sources of energy like solar energy is available readily, which are less in terms of carbon footprint. Thermal power is going to be out, if not in next 10 years, maybe in next 2-3 decades. It has to be phased out in all of the countries. We can't, for instance, build a development model based on that kind of polluting environment. That kind of, this is an example only. That is where you need to balance in every sector. What sort of development? You are from Agra, you said. Can you have the leather industry in Agra polluting the river Yamuna day in and day out? We need to think of non-polluting ways of promoting leather industry, which is possible by having modern zero discharge kind of units where all the effluents are treated, STPs are built. But the livelihood of the leather artisans is important. But we need to think of a model which is compatible with protection of the river, Yamuna River. It is so pathetic the way the pollution in Kanpur and Agra because leather industry, even to the great monument of Taj Mahal, the Mathura refinery, there were dangers to Taj Mahal which they talked about. This is where you need to balance. Whether I can locate the refinery in Mathura or I need to take protections so that the heritage is protected and the Taj does not turn yellow. That in a way sums up the debate between development and environmental protection. I think it answers the question. Okay, I think we.
Okay, guys, sir has one more important meetings lined up, so but let's keep it on record. Very grateful to indebted to.
So,
Yeah.
I have one question.
Okay, go ahead. One last question I will allow. Yeah, please.
Sir, I wanted to ask about the impact of Paris Agreement. We all know that US withdraw from the Paris Agreement. But sir,
Will you please repeat?
hello sir, can you hear me?
Can't hear you properly. Impact of what?
Paris Agreement, sir. Paris Agreement.
Paris Agreement.
Yeah, sir. So I wanted to know your opinion, sir, on this particular issue.
I think Dr. Ramesh would like to supplement on this. He would like to answer.
Aditya, please introduce yourself. I'll answer you. Introduce yourself. Okay,
Please answer.
Good evening, sir. My name is Aditya Chingalia. I am currently pursuing law from IAS Law College.
Okay.
So my question was, what is your opinion on Paris Agreement, US withdrawal from Paris Agreement?
Yeah, please go ahead.
See, Aditya, if you are referring to before Kyoto Protocol, Japan led Kyoto Protocol.
That is the latest one.
Paris is the latest one. So the shortcomings of that they wanted to cover in this. In the nitty-gritties, we'll answer you in the short duration.
No, the withdrawal from the Paris Agreement of important developed countries is a cause of concern. If USA and other major powers, which are responsible for the global climate crisis to a large extent, shy away from the responsibility, the agreement is doomed to failure. That is where the whole world, it is like USA pulling out of WHO. These have got serious long-term implications, which the whole world is affected by that. So it does not augur well for the future if major countries, there is no consensus on what they have to do for the climate crisis. It's a cause of concern. I would say the Paris Agreement is like one step forward and two steps backward. We need to address those concerns and persuade the most developed countries to make their commitment. You cannot have a president in Brazil, Bolsonaro, who says, I don't care if the Amazon forests are cut for the development. We can't have the crisis in Australia going unanswered, or the forest fire in California going unabated. We need to, as a country, as a world, we need to address these burning issues of climate crisis everywhere. We need to create public opinion. We don't need a Swedish teenager to tell to be a wake-up conscience keeper of the whole world. Everyone has to behave like the Swedish girl to see that all of us play our role in creating awareness, particularly the young people like you. Thank you.
Sir, thank you, sir. Without taking much time, 1 minute, I will sum up, sir. Sir, we have seen your leadership here for the last 3 years, sir. and you not only words, but your deeds speak more than your words. The way that you have been managing this campus, in tune, in balance with nature, the kind of importance that you have been giving to the maintenance of the gardens or the flora fauna or the ecosystem in this campus, sir. Sir, it's a small token of appreciation because of your blessings. Center for Human Security Studies has been doing well. We wanted to very humbly put it, token of appreciation, donate 25,000 rupees to the gardeners, keeping this pandemic on mind.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ramesh. That's a nice gesture. In fact, this evening, this afternoon, we launched.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Please wait, sir is speaking, please wait.
We launched a new project which is a Japanese model of on intensive cultivation. It's called the Miyawaki method. In a small area, 180 plants are being of different species are being planted. We just launched it. Happens to be to commemorate the centenary year of P.V. Narasimha Rao, former Prime Minister. We named our library after him, unveiled a portrait, and also launched this Miyawaki cultivation, the forest which will grow in it. We have planted over 30,000 trees on our campus in the last 2 years. We are generating 855 kilowatts of solar energy on our campus, thereby saving 10 to 12 lakhs per month in our power bill. It's a role model for other the trainees when they come here. They need to learn this. This is today the highest solar power generating rooftop system in a public building in our state. So every institution, every public building must harness solar energy, and that is what I was referring to. Our models of development have to change. Thank you. With that, we close this.
Thank you very much, guys, and please pray for these good times, and also keep working. And just you have witnessed a man who not only speaks but does the work. Handsome is one. What handsome does. That's what Sir has been doing, and I have been witnessing here to keep the sustainable development goals in balance with the nature, and also for us. So I take this opportunity. And
we will end with a small video of the Jana Gana Mana, which is very touching and poignant. I saw it a couple of days ago. I request all of you to stand up.
Next one.